And we're back. Welcome to No Direction, the Pathfinder news, reviews, and interviews podcast. I'm your host, Vanessa Hoskins.
And I'm Luis Loza.
And today we have Ron Lundeen, Paizo's own Ron Lundeen, and the network's own as well, joining us to talk about how everything is switching to 5th edition. No, that's not true.
We already did that.
We did that joke.
Yeah. April Fools.
But what we do want to talk about is this sensation Abomination Vaults that is getting like the royal treatment and then some by Paizo, including a 5th edition conversion and a special edition. Like, please just tell us what is going on with Abomination Vaults. It is everywhere.
It is. This is awesome. So the Abomination Vaults is, I mean, it's fantastic. It's our first real foray into a 3-volume adventure path. That was how we did it right when we came out, and that was going to be very exciting. We'd had some success with 3-volume adventure paths in Starfinder. Mm-hmm. So we're like, well, maybe they can work for Pathfinder. There was a little more reluctance, I think, to give it a try on the Pathfinder side because the 6-volume 1 through 17 in first edition, 17-ish, and then 1 through 20 in second edition had done us really well. And might it make people think they were only getting half of a campaign, or make us think that we were afraid of a high level in our own game, or what might people think? But it sort of calmed everybody down. I said, no, I think this will work. And what we could do is the same sort of trickery that Starfinder did, which is to do a three-part low level immediately followed by a 3-part high level. One could go into the other if you wanted 6, and maybe if cutting down to 3 in fact was a terrible idea, we kind of kept all 6 with Fists of the Ruby Phoenix. But it wasn't a terrible idea. It did really, really well. I think a lot of that had to do with just the very approachable nature of it. Here is a town with a great big dungeon outside of it.
Yes.
Go inside and kick down doors and wreck up the dungeon.
But because I was gonna say it's very, very like Temple of Elemental Evil-esque.
It is. Yeah. With a little Hamlet outside. Mm-hmm. One of the things that made Temple of Elemental Evil, I think, very approachable is the fact that there are a lot of sort of things going on in the dungeon and a lot of sort of subplots that weave through. We wanted to make sure we leaned hard into that. We didn't want to give a string of fights. What we wanted to do was tell a story, and we wanted to have side quests that you could go on that were sometimes about helping people, and a lot of reasons to come into and out of the dungeon, make the town really alive, and make people that are there matter. And that really resonated with the fans, and the Abomination Vaults 3-part adventure path did really, really well. And so well, in fact, that when we were sitting thinking about, all right, well, how might we give one of our second edition adventure paths the same sort of treatment we did for Rise of the Runelords in first edition, for Curse of the Crimson Throne in first edition, like we were doing with Kingmaker for the update for second edition. What's a real evergreen kind of product? Okay. And I'd said all along, I think that Abomination Vaults will be an evergreen kind of product. In fact, I don't have a lot of leverage into necessarily sales or how many volumes of something we print or produce, but in every way that I could, I said, let's not go nuts on printing a lot of this 3-volume adventure path, because if it doesn't succeed, we won't be out very much product sitting in our warehouse. And if it does succeed, we'll almost immediately flip it to a compilation that then is an evergreen product that game stores can keep in their stores all the time. It's the very approachable way to get into the game. And as soon as we started talking about approachable way into the game, there were, what ties do we make to the beginner box, which is sort of our evergreen product to bring people in there. The Troubles in Otari Adventure, which is about expanding the beginner box a little bit. So there's a whole part of the world that we'd started to explore to make sort of our evergreen location, the new Sandpoint, I guess you might say, of Pathfinder 2nd edition. The Abomination Vaults really, really fed into that. And then all the way through the development, I wanted to make it very clear in my mind, all right, what's going on in each level, and how do those chapters divide up? And in my mind, what I was doing was designing not 3 standalone stories, but 10 levels beginning to end with a couple of gates in them that made it a little hard to go from, one in between a couple of the points.
Yeah, a couple speed bumps to make sure that you've caught up with the narrative and leveling and gear and all that stuff.
Exactly right. And then I think that I absolutely have to acknowledge that we got 3 absolutely stellar authors to do this. So.
Well, at least 2. I must admit that I am one of those 3. So full disclosure, I wrote part 2 out of 3 of the adventure path of the Abomination Vaults, this part specifically titled Hand of the Devil. Yeah, I just really quick, I feel honored, intimidated to have an adventure sitting sandwiched between James Jacobs at part 1, who has an amazing intro. The whole thing is just like chock full of all of these interesting, intricate little stories and how everyone's like involved with each other. And then Stephen Randy McFarlane on the other side with like the big finish ending that is like grandiose and big things are happening. And I have like the sandbox part in the middle. It's like, here's the part of the dungeon that no one's really visited for a long time and cares about. And that stuff is happening. And so there's like storylines there that are interwoven within those people, but it was very much being like, I am surrounded on either side by giants and I am a gnome.
No, here's why your middle part matters, and here's why you should be very, very proud of it. Because the middle part is where the narrative arc would sag, right? Because the first part is we make you care about the town and what's going on. And Stephen Randy McFarlane is a master of creating intricate dungeons and that sort of story. So we've got the first part where you're going to care a lot about the town, and we've got this third part where it's mostly going to be about the dungeon. Yeah. How do you get people to care about the middle? How do you get people to bridge it? You have to have compelling characters, rivalries with each other within the same sort of section of levels.
Right.
So people can go back to the town a little bit less because they're kind of getting their own like. I mean, it's really important. It's kind of critical from a narrative perspective to have that bridge.
Right.
And you knocked it out of the park. It was great.
Well, I kind of cheated. Spoiler alerts. If you're going to play this, just skip ahead like 30 seconds. I decided to include a rock band because I thought that was something that'll get enough attention that people will be like, well, maybe this is an okay part.
Yep. And that's just one of the different web of people. Somebody who hates somebody else and wants to wrestle them, and we just set up a wrestling between these two people, and anyway, it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Cool. So, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Ron, you have what sounds like a very strong narrative. A very strong, great campaign. Start to finish, very accessible, very classic in feel, but not necessarily like. It's up to speed with what Paizo does. You get a Paizo adventure, you get an adventure path. There's a kind of a Paizo seal of quality that comes with it's part of the adventure path line. So it makes a lot of sense why this becomes a compilation, right? It's a kind of exciting 2E AP that can kind of cover all quadrants, every type of player. But how do you make that jump from let's compile it, make a nice hardcover to now let's also put it in 5e.
Yeah, this is the. I mean, it is perhaps a little bit spoilery to mention that in this dungeon there are dragons. I mean, at least 2 of them, and so so right there we've already got the Dungeons and Dragons name. Why not go ahead and make
those are the primary components of any 5e product, obviously.
Actually, it's surprisingly it's not. They don't do a lot of dungeons of their own. They don't have a lot of dungeon products. They do dungeon updates, right? They've got a product, Tales of the Yawning Portal, which is taking some older dungeons and then putting them in with the current set of the rules.
Right.
But they don't have a mega dungeon type of thing. I guess Waterdeep has Undermountain. I mean, there's anyway. So we thought there was not only a place for this within what people are looking to play, but we thought it made a great opportunity for us to show off. Here's what storytelling Paizo can do in something that is going to be very approachable and familiar to you. You're kicking down doors and you're fighting monsters, but we're able to put the spin on it of all these side quests and interesting people and a fun narrative. And in some cases, some neat rules twists that you might not have seen before in your 5th edition games. So So we thought that would be a really good opportunity to bring that forward into the 5th edition of the game.
Okay, very cool. Question: whose big idea was it to take a Paizo product, a Pathfinder, a natively a Pathfinder product, and port it into a 5th edition product?
I think ultimately it was Eric Mona.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but here's where the seed got planted.
Sure.
When we were doing the Kingmaker crowdfunded campaign,
right.
One of the things that we did in the Kingmaker crowdfunding campaign is, in addition to updating the whole thing to Pathfinder 2nd edition, we're doing 2 bestiaries. Mm-hmm. It's just the monsters and the traps, I think. It's nothing else. But it's the Pathfinder 1st edition. So you can go ahead and kind of have 2 books open at the same time. Mm-hmm. The Pathfinder 2nd edition, the 1st edition to run it in Pathfinder 1st edition. And a 5th edition bestiary, where you got that kind of open at the same time. And that required we take a lot of monsters that we have that aren't in the 5th edition SRD, and create stats for those. And we worked hard with people to do that. So we've got Linorms, and we've got Shulns, and we've got Cothuges, and our Reefclaw, our crazy monsters. And we have 5th edition stats for a lot of those. And I remember thinking, and it was probably after Eric came up with a great idea, kind of going through this Kingmaker 5th edition bestiary and go, well, I mean, this is a lot of the work done already for an Abomination Vaults conversion, right?
Yeah, right.
Because I got a Shuln you got to fight. We already did the stats right here. I've got the Cothuge you got to fight. We already got the stats right here.
Sure.
And then my biggest mistake was, probably isn't going to be that hard.
Right.
Except it was hard.
Except it was, I'm sure. It seems like something that would be very difficult. One question for you then is, who did the conversion? Was that you? Did you hire a freelancer?
No.
How did that function?
No. Oh, we hired David N. Ross, who was
good choice.
Stellar. I mean, I'd had the privilege of working with David N. Ross on several different 5th edition products for freelance. We worked together very closely, and with Louis as well, on Planet Apocalypse, which was nominated for an Emmy. So I feel like that was, a really good product for us to worked on, get to know each other on. So when it was a matter of converting this adventure path over, I asked him if he'd be available. He was, and he did a fantastic job. And I don't just mean he took the rules and then updated how they needed to be. Okay. This is a guy that understands how 5th edition works. Like, for example, one of the first things he came to me to say was, I understand how you've got every level of this built out for one character level.
Right, yes.
5th edition speeds through level 1 really fast. As written, you have way too many encounters on the top level of the dungeon. It's just exactly right to get Pathfinder 2nd edition players from 1st level to 2nd level. It's way too many for 5th edition.
Gotcha.
Here's how I would suggest consolidating these. So not only did he pose the situation, which I hadn't really thought about, he posed solutions, right? I would compile these 2 together. When these 2 characters are talking about this monster, the monster's dead. So you come across, it's you don't have to worry about yet another fight. In addition to all of the detailed, how much treasure does 5th edition give out? What the number of enemies in a encounter is all different in 5th edition. He did a fantastic job keeping all that in mind, and all the way through, even when you get to the very end, like the very bottom of the 10th level of the dungeon, he's just as careful there about, okay, what do you face and how will it work for a party of this size?
Gotcha.
And it was just so thoughtfully done. David, he did a great job.
Well, I know I'm looking forward to seeing it. One thing that I'm just going to bring this up right now, that has a lot of people talking, is the cover art that they used. I'm just going to put it on the screen here for our Twitch audience. It is very different stylistically than most Pathfinder art. It's a little more photorealistic, with like dramatic lighting. I almost feel like this is going to be a movie called The Abomination Vaults, with, Belcora's ghost like screaming in the background. It is very floating heads.
Well, I can't say anything about any future movie plans in the works for the Abomination.
Well, I was trying to trick you into that.
Yeah,
so.
No. That's the final art. It is.
Oh, okay.
It is fundamentally like the Kingmaker cover in that it's an array of villains that you would face. It's just Kingmaker being outside. It's an exterior shot, so you can see the land behind. It's a lot of natural lighting. This is a dungeon adventure. So it's an interior shot with some gloomy focused lighting and so on and things like that. It's fantastic. I love it. The art in particular, I think, does a really good job of showcasing not only some of the villains, but the real variety of villains that you're going to come into contact with.
Oh yeah, that Sagathi is really intimidating.
Gross worm monster.
It's very much like, here's a gross monster. There are gross monsters. It's the Abomination Vaults.
Exactly.
Oh, very good. Okay. So someone, probably Eric Mona, decided you're going to do 5th edition. You got David and Ross converting the whole thing. When is this going to be out? I don't know that that's been talked about.
November, I believe.
November okay,
2022.
So
yeah.
In November, I can get my hands on it and see what I look like. Actually, our own Dustin Knight in chat said that I'm finally a 5th edition author. I don't know if that tracks the same way. I'm like,
you are a 5th edition author now. That's
I just kind of slid into it on accident. But that's a really interesting thing to think about. Is like, I'm just gonna sidebar for a second here. The path of your work, that you give it up to a publisher and they're going to do something with it. And I know other authors I've talked to have been like, oh, I created this feat or this archetype or this whatever it is monster that I thought was for this one book, and then they held on to it, and all of a sudden it's in another book that I didn't even know I was writing for, and there's my name on the author list because they used my stuff. And it's kind of interesting because it's like, okay, well, that's porting from Pathfinder to Pathfinder, but it's sort of odd. It's like, wait, I'm getting ported to 5e. That's so strange. One question I do have to ask though, with the hardcover treatment, and I believe even with the special edition, there were some tweaks made to the adventure, little changes, right?
Yeah, we did. A lot of the changes in the compiled 2nd edition were sort of, quality of life changes that people thought, or early on, you see a picture of the main villain back when she was alive, not the scary ghostly version.
Right.
And people were like, I don't have anything to show my players.
Yeah, what does that look like?
Except for the scary ghost version. So, all right, well, we commissioned that art. Some of the other things that were, some of the other pieces that we had a couple of tweaks to the illustration. There's one encounter really early on that was too lethal for what it was intended to be. The monster is built to be a little bit too lethal. And so we scaled that
one on
back.
Level 4?
Yep. No. This is the one right on level 2, I want to say.
Oh, I thought it was the level 4 one. There's a one on the 4th floor that is also super deadly.
Also bad.
So bad.
So we made some tweaks like that. There were some places where the maps didn't quite line up. I mean, where it said it was going to down to this room, but that room wasn't in the right place. I mean, we did, I think, a really good job of aligning everything the first time around. But there's we did a little bit better. We had the opportunity to go back and do better. I don't think anybody who is posting in the forum or the GM chats like, this confuses me. What did you guys do about that? Well, I did X, I did Y, I did Z. I mean, I don't know that anybody knew I was watching and, a couple of people have found this to be confusing. I'd better clarify it.
Sure. We do have a couple questions from chat, both from Dustin Knight. The first one that I'm going to read is, was any content in the 5e version taken from your Abomination Vaults GM guide on Pathfinder Infinite?
No. No, that would be skeevy. I mean, the Abomination Vaults GM's guide is entirely a personal product.
Understood.
And what I tried to do was make sure that in putting that together, I was putting myself in the mind of, all right, what is because I'm also running the campaign, right? What would make it useful for me in running it? So on an entirely separate computer, separately from work hours, let me put this thing together. So the one of the things that would be, for example, I think quality of life improvement that we didn't have space for was a tracker to track all of the individual side quests. That was really useful. I wanted it as a GM, so I put it in the GM's guide. But even though I thought about that kind of thing for the compilation in the 5e, that's a page and a half, almost 2 pages.
True.
It is so hard to find a whole extra spread of stuff. I mean, do I cut out art? Do I cut out content? Well, that was too hard to do.
It is interesting that you mention that, because that goes to where my question is. So you have these 3 bits. There maybe is stuff that authors wrote that's really juicy that you couldn't use. But now that you're shifting things around and making space, and you got a hardcover book, so you might be able to add a few extra pages in there. And you're also porting it to 5th edition. You know what I'm going to ask you.
Yep, go ahead.
Did you put back the flooding of the dungeon?
There was not enough room to put back the flooding of the dungeon. And there goes Vanessa.
Can't believe this. All the freaking... Okay, I'm sorry. I needed a minute. I needed a moment.
That's all right. That's
okay. Do you mind if I tell them what it is?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So for those of you listening, and again, if you're playing, mute it for 30 seconds. It won't be that much. And if you're listening to this, fast forward 30 seconds from now. So if you're playing Hand of the Devil, there is a spot on the map where there is a big lake in one floor. And if you look at the floor below it, there is also a room full of lava. Now, if you count out squares, you will notice that the big lake sits on top of the room full of lava. And there is that's right there. And there is 100%, a page and a half of math and rules and notes that got cut. That is my explanation of what to do if the players want to tunnel through the bottom of the lake to flood the lake into the lava room, permanently changing the structure of the dungeon and who lives there and who's doing what. And it is extensive. And let me tell you, you don't want to be in a room full of superheated steam after a bunch of water hits lava. But I did a stupid ton of research on it and got all of the aquadynamics, I think, pretty much right. And have a spreadsheet to prove it. And I was a little sad that it was cut, but I totally understand that sort of extravagance might get cut from an adventure. So now that you know, I'm sure you can figure it out on your own.
We have a lot that we expect our GMs to do, and maybe cubic flow calculations on top of that might be a little, just a little bit too much. But look at level appropriate damage and figure that out. That's probably fine. It's not enough. I'll tell you that, because I did the calculations. It is not enough damage. But yeah, it's I figured out the mass of the water, the volume rather of the water, based on the average depths and how big it was, a whole thing. And then the force it would push you depending on where you were, because because the room coming into the room is an angle, so the force that it pushes changes based on the volume of the water and the steam as it comes into the that's.
Well, and I also read it so that it's a small opening at first, so you have a chance to get away because you can't get sucked through a small opening, right? And only so much water can go through a small opening, but eventually that water is going to erode that hole and make it larger, and you will not be able to escape. So you have 2 or 3 rounds to swim out of that pool before you get sucked through, and you're rolling up a new character, probably.
But that pool is also filled with monsters, and so how much does this type of monster block a hole of this size with this amount of pressure behind it? There's a lot of computations that go in there.
Folks are asking if I can release it on Pathfinder Infinite. I have asked. Paizo owns those words.
We own the words. Yeah,
Paizo owns the words. I can tell you about it because this is an interview, and Ron said it was fine, and he works for Paizo. But until Paizo relinquishes the words or decides to publish it themselves, it is theirs. I gave it to them. I am just really happy to have a dungeon that changes, and it's been
Vanessa,
far more than 30 seconds.
You could write up a set of rules for this exact kind of scenario, just generically for GMs to use.
If you happen to have a pool of water that's about this big, and it happens to be above a spherical room.
Just give 4 or 5 different examples.
With the ramp in it. Now Pathfinder is going to be what would happen if the ramp went down into the room, if the ramp went up, if the ramp, all kinds of different.
I don't know what your dungeon looks like. I have no idea.
That sounds like a very video game solution to a puzzle, which is great. I love it.
Yeah.
So that means I can definitely add it in my home game when the time comes.
You should.
Ron, question for you. So the AP volumes come with a lot of back matter. There's a deity article, for Nimbleoth, I believe, and monsters and new items and so on and so forth. How much of that is making it into the compilation first and foremost, and then how much of that is then also getting ported to 5e, if at all?
Good question. The back matters that we have is a gazetteer of the town of Otari. Mm-hmm. That made it in. We've got a sort of an ecology article about will-o-wisps, which did not make it into the compilation. There were, in the back of that, there were a few alternate abilities, alternate types of will-o-wisps, at least one of which is in the adventure. So I actually copied over all of the necessary stuff for you to run that monster. A Spellvoid Wisp, I think it's called, as just so it looks like a custom monster when in fact it was pulled from the Will-O-Wisp article. The Ghosts article, same thing. The Ghosts article didn't make it, but a couple places where we use those types of abilities, it's got everything you need in the monster itself. And then we've got the article about Nimbleoth, the evil deity of swamps and ghosts and despair. That did make it in. So, and then I feel like I'm missing one to but the upshot is, and they didn't get into the back, the way we have it designed. And I think it's a little more approachable this way. Oh, there's a flesh warping article as well. We didn't port that over. The way that we've got the new adventure structured is that there's when you open up the hardcover book, there's a campaign introduction. Then there's the gazetteer of the town of Otari.
Smart.
Then the 10 levels of the dungeon. And then the Nimbleoth article, and then the toolbox with all the new monsters and rules and stuff that you would need all at the end. So the very short answer to your question that I answered in a very long-winded way was two articles made it. And in the 5e version, we're definitely, and the 5e version not quite done yet.
Okay. Yep.
But we are definitely keeping the town of Otari because it's an important base.
Sure.
But I don't think we're going to have the Nimbleoth article. I don't think we're going to have room because we need to include so many stat blocks.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Into we don't need to we don't need to tell a Pathfinder 2nd edition GM what is a Grothlet flesh warp, and but for 5e we have to give a whole stat block for those and a little bit of description about what they even are. And when you do that for 50 or 60 monsters, that takes up a huge chunk of space. And so there just wasn't the room. Even after blowing out the page count a little bit, there just wasn't any room.
So that's an interesting question then. If I'm a 5th edition player, hold on, let me get in that headspace. If I'm a 5th edition player and I'm reading about this world and I'm trying to make this work, do I use what deities do I use if I'm a cleric or a paladin? Like how do I make the elements of the world of Golarion that are game rule specific to Pathfinder fit into 5th edition if there's no guidance for that?
We give you little hints along the way. One of the things that's really useful about this is we don't need to do a whole lot of deity conversion. Nimbleoth is an evil deity that is sort of, it just invented in either case. We do set everything in Golarion. We have mentions of people who might be Chilaxian, or the city of Absalom is right over there. That's a big part of the setting. We don't necessarily need to worry about whether you're using, if you're a follower of Serenre, are you actually a follower of what type of paladin order do you take, or what sort of cleric domains do you get? That's all player stuff. We just say the town has a temple of Serenre in it, and there's some other gods. And we might have gone in to say Serenre, goddess of light and life. I do remember one place in particular, we clarify that there's a lot of creatures that speak Aklo.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
We clarify that is a dialect of deep speech or something like that, to be able to say, 5th edition players don't know Aklo, but they know deep speech.
Oh, I got it. Yeah.
Which is functionally the same. It's what evil monsters speak. So we try to make things that way.
Dustin Knight in chat says, assume all the 5e gods are Imperial Lords and or Archfiends.
And there you go.
Pretty good idea. We have another question. Will there be 5th edition virtual tabletop support?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't even know if I don't know. I barely know anything about virtual tabletop support for 2nd edition. That's
Right, again.
I think isn't the thing usually that Paizo will share any and all things they have with their partners, and the partners get to decide what they do or don't support usually.
right. We have well, let me put it this way. We have no reason to be any less likely to share Abomination Vaults 5th edition for virtual tabletops. I don't know what we're gonna do, but I don't know anything about let's keep it all secret and not share. I mean, that does
I think the answer then would be, if you want 5e Abomination Vaults on Roll20, go bang the drum at Roll20's door until they give it to you.
Another question, or a comment rather, Zathos of Varisia says, I think it's interesting how there is going to be a set of battle cards released too. Is Abomination Vaults getting battle cards?
It sure is. So we also announced that there's going to be a set of Abomination Vaults battle cards, which has art for all of the, it's the way we do our battle cards. They're about yay big, right? I'm holding up my fingers on a screen. That's not going to help anybody.
They're this big. Just look at the screen on your podcast.
But they are with the image of the monster on the front and all the stats that you need on the back. And what we've done is with the pawn set, when we did the Abomination Vaults pawn set, the general sense is we're going to assume you've got other pawns. So if you need 6 Mythlit Gremlins in order to run Abomination Vaults, and we know you've already got 2 of them from the bestiary box, we're not going to give you all 6. We're just going to give you 4 more.
So that's a lot of Mythlits.
There's so many of those evil Smurfs. Anyway, with the Abomination Vaults battle card, we didn't do that. We don't assume you have any other battle cards. So you will get a Mythlit Gremlin battle card. This required that we do a little bit more art, because every battle card has some art on the back. And whereas we might have said, for example, this is a named Gug. We could have the Gug art. That's fine. If we happen to have a separate illustration of that Gug, we would. But there's some custom people that we didn't have any art for, and we needed to get some, either from the pawn set or from the or order new for this. You may note that let's just say you find a band of performers, right? There are only 3 of the 4 of them illustrated in the adventure. Well, we needed an illustration of the 4th one, because the 4th one everybody gets their own card.
I thought they were all 4 in that vignette.
Yeah, but we can't turn a vignette into an individual. That requires a lot of work.
No, I understand. A few of them are probably easier to pull out than one of them. So, and I think I know who probably got missed without having to go back and remember and look. But very cool.
Not missed anymore. There was a pawn forum, now there's a battle card forum.
Yes.
And sometimes I was able to get a new card. There is you meet some people who ride around on lizards underground, like pack animals.
That's cool.
Well, the frilled lizard picture that we have looks pretty ominous, like it's hissing and it's got its frills out and everything. I'm like, no, can we just do an image of one of them that's just like a pack animal? It's got like a saddle with a bunch of stuff on it. Yeah. And so that's the card that we've got for that, for example. So yeah, we've been able to make a couple of improvements so that when you actually show, you're looking at the stats on the back of the card, and you're showing your players, here's what the front of the card looks like.
Yeah.
It's everything you're going to need for the Abomination Vaults. There's, I want to say there's 200 of them, but you wouldn't need any battle cards other than those.
That is so cool. All right, so Abomination Vaults has a special edition. We have a 5th edition version coming out. Holy cow. We have battle cards. What other special treatments is Abomination Vaults getting that you can announce?
Oh, that's we've got all the stuff that we still have for the Abomination Vaults, right? We got a pawn set for them.
You got a pawn set?
The individual volumes, if you want to be able to dig deep into the some of the lore that we put in the back. There's a couple of monsters in the back of the individual volumes that, because they weren't used in the adventure, we didn't include them. So
that makes sense.
You want a Sugathi reality warper? Well, then you've got to get the individual volume to get the
I actually
Sugathi
do specifically want a reality warper. I don't know how you
Kinda
knew that. What I want is a swarm of they're not Grothlets. What are they called? They were the ones I created that were like
the Gibtos, the little bouncy deals.
Gibtos.
With
Yeah.
the
They like
mouth
bounce
them.
around on two big legs, and they're like evil Pac-Man.
So this is a yeah, they are, and
They're just
and they're
big
awesome.
balls with giant mouths and two legs, and they jump around and bite things.
They do,
And they have a swarm of baby ones.
That's true, but the swarm of them isn't in the adventure.
That's true.
So no battle card for it. But
I know, it's very sad.
You want the swarm of little ones. The stats of the swarm of little ones are. You got to get the individual volume. Hands of the Devil, right here. This is probably instructive. When I went through the volumes for all four of these, I made a set of I made notes about everything on every page that needed to change when I was doing the hardcover compilation, and I took about, I want to say maybe half of these I took out, but this is anyway.
Ron, you are holding up a book that is just chock full of Post-it notes.
3 books with Post-it notes spilling out of the sides. Yeah,
there's like a Costco size vat of Post-it notes sticking out of those books. That's a lot of notes.
I think weren't there some pre-painted minis among some of the sets here and there that lined up with Abomination Vaults? I think there were some Drow in the Darklands set here and there.
There are ones where the model for the mini
was based off art from the AP.
Based off of art from the Abomination Vaults, but there isn't an Abomination Vault, so you'd kind of have to bits and piece those together, but you could.
Like the band doesn't have minis.
I don't think so. I don't think any of them do.
I mean, why would they?
I bet we could figure out someone who could 3D print, make models in 3D print.
Do we know anybody that does that?
I don't know anyone who is so into 3D printing that they started a podcast about it. Nobody at all.
I think the other thing that is a big selling point for the 5e compilation is that you can get it in PDF form when it comes out, which is not a thing that most 5e books aren't in PDF form.
True.
That is a good point. Yeah, that's going to be new and weird to 5e players. They're like, wait, I can buy a PDF of this?
Yeah, it won't come out on D&D Beyond or other things, but
we're not connected into that. But
sure.
Well, I mean, we're for this role, we are third-party publisher doing our own thing, the same way that any number of other ones that have a lot of really high quality, but nonetheless aren't Wizards of the Coast are doing. So.
Sure, like Rogue Genius Games making something called Scaldwood Blight, like that. They're just a third party making their own adventure path.
Third party.
I think we've gone on long enough waiting to ask the big question, but I think we have to put you on the spot now, Ron. Is Paizo dying now? Is this why you're doing a 5e compilation?
That is true. That is the rumor. I heard it from several unreliable sources.
I heard that you're looking
YouTube
to have Wizards buy you out and proving that, look, we can make 5e stuff, so buy us. Or you're just like, let's convert everything to 5e. Let's do it all.
Neither of those things are true. And I know people higher up in the company than I am have a lot to say about that. You might have some quotes that you can read from them. but I will tell you,
okay.
I personally have no other 5e products that are currently planned on my plate. And I just had a meeting scheduling Pathfinder 2nd edition products into 2025.
Jeez.
So we are thinking ahead,
planning
ahead, and sticking with Pathfinder 2nd edition. It's a game that we love, but there's sort of no reason not to make this sort of exploration. The same way that maybe we do this 3-volume AP. Initially, there were people even then who were like, "Oh, that's it," they're kind of throwing all their games over there. Paizo's done with. They're doing 3-volume adventure paths now.
Right.
I mean, it's the same. No, it was a test, and it happened to be a really successful one. This is a test. We hope it's going to be a successful one. What we hope is that it's going to bring a lot of people who are playing 5th edition now, to Paizo, looking at Paizo, going, "Oh, these people really know how to make a really cool adventure." And the world that they're in is really engaging. And what else have they done? Maybe we should take a look.
Maybe. That's very cool. All right, well, let's hear from some of the big wigs over at Paizo and see what they have to say about this 5th edition and how Paizo is doing in regards to it. Luis, do you want to take the first one?
Yeah, this is where I wish we could have gone to like a satellite feed and been like,
I
"Oh, here's Jason Bowman." That would have been great.
I
No,
mean,
but
I wish.
Jason Bowman via Twitter a couple days ago in regards to this whole situation, and people's response to it mentioned that Pathfinder is not in trouble. That doing a 5e version of Abomination Vaults is a chance for 5e folks to check out our world and stories. Pathfinder 2e is doing great, and we're excited to put out more materials for it in the coming years. You just wait. We have so much in store.
Now, can you do that again, but in like an imitation of Jason Bowman's voice? We really want to get the flavor.
Let me grow an extra like foot taller.
Foot and a half, yeah.
Before I do that.
That might never mind. That you work for Paizo. That might not be the best strategy for you. Imitating your boss. Okay. But we have another one from Eric Mona, publisher, who is likely the person who decided to do the 5th edition. On Reddit, he says, I can tell you right now that it's not the start of a long-term plan to abandon 2E. 2nd edition is popular and selling well. That said, it doesn't sell as well to people currently playing 5th edition, and that's a lot of people. So we're doing this to let people check out our adventure without having to switch systems. That's it. You don't even have to wait to find out the secret plan. So,
well, that is the secret plan. One of the things that I like to keep in mind is that we think a lot about who are Paizo. We think a lot about who our competitors are. Wizards of the Coast is our competitor. They're orders of magnitude bigger than we are. I don't think Wizards of the Coast considers us much of a competitor. I mean, their competitors are Blizzard and Marvel and Disney, and I mean that's the entertainment space in which they are operating. Right. I certainly not only do I not think that this is the kind of thing that they would feel threatened by. I'm particularly amused by people who think we're trying to show off to them so they would buy us. Wait, that's right. That's not how any of this works.
That's not how any of this works. I think it's just a smart move, honestly. You've already got most of the legwork done in terms of you have a story, you have adventures, it's all planned out. As you said, there are some system differences that David's had to deal with in terms of like too many encounters, or it doesn't really work this way, or whatever it is for 5th edition to make it work. So there's some challenges, but when you have all of this good resources that already exist, just converting them to another system to widen your audience seems like a pretty natural thing to do. I do think it's a little risky in that 5th edition players are used to things happening a certain way. They're used to adventures being less spelled out for them and more sort of, and then there's some undead monsters in this corridor, do whatever you want, left up to the GM to fill in the blanks. So it'll be interesting to see what their reaction is to an adventure that is a bit more specific in terms of what you can find and who's doing what to whom and how you get there.
Yeah, it is a bit more scripted in that one of the things that I've seen in a lot of 5th edition adventures is they'll do like monster rosters in a dungeon. Like here's all the people and how they might move around and how we expect Abomination Vaults GMs to do that as you see fit. We would expect Abomination Vaults DMs to do that as they see fit. We're gonna tell you right where every monster is and what they're gonna do when the players arrive. But there's nothing that they can move out of the room just fine. We just haven't presented it as sort of an overview roster of here's everybody, now throw them all at the party if you want.
Here's a bunch of encounters. They're somewhere on this floor. You get some room descriptions. Have fun.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So, but I am curious to see how that difference will play out and how that'll be received. So that's
I am, and I'm enough of a realist to know, an optimistic realist. I think it's awesome. I mean, I think we're going to put out a product that's awesome, but we're not going to put out a product that's perfect. And I'm waiting for the inevitable. Oh, can you believe in Area A3 they did this? And D&D never does it that way. Oh, Paizo, they don't get D&D. All right, well, understand that this was originally not a D&D product, and it's not Wizards of the Coast. Maybe approach how we've done things with a little bit of with a sense that there's going to be a difference.
Right.
We might not get it right every single time. That's fine. Just kill off all your characters with the TPK and start again.
Yikes.
I think the 5e community might actually have a little bit of grant you slack, right? not just Paizo, but a lot of people who 5e has got so many third-party companies producing stuff. So they each probably have their own take on things. DM's Guild has so many different authors on it. I'm sure if you are a DM or a player that's willing to look beyond official releases, you're probably already kind of used to a variety of different looks and presentations and stuff. So you know what, that might not even be anything that rubs anyone the wrong way if they decide to take a look at Abomination Vaults 5e.
All right, so Abomination Vaults is out. What are you all gonna convert to 5e next? Because obviously that's the big secret plan.
Oh, that's true. I don't know. we don't have any plans to convert anything to 5e. Or let me put it this way. Eric was the one that said, "Hey, let's give this a try in 5e." Right? He hasn't told me what to convert. Now, I'm not in the process of converting anything to 5e. Right now, I'm in the process of trying to do my final development pass and copy fit of this Abomination Vaults 5e. I don't have time for any more 5e right now.
Still working on this one.
And I'm still developing the Bloodlords adventure path. I've got a lot going on.
Oh my gosh, Bloodlords. Yeah. Hey, you know what? Since we do have you on, I'm just gonna ask you really quick. Tell us, give us a quick pitch on Bloodlords, because that is cool.
Oh, this is neat. This is a 1 through 6, or 6 volume, 1st through 20th level campaign that takes place in the nation of Geb, which is ruled by an evil ghost king who is sort of shackled with ennui, and he in fact leads his whole nation is run by the group of mostly but not exclusively undead called the Bloodlords. They're mostly but not exclusively necromancers.
I mean, there's a few living people in there, and we forgive them for that.
There are, and there are a few people who don't know about necromancy, but there's some that have been around for the many thousands of years since Geb became a ghost in the first place. But they sort of run the nation. And the Bloodlords adventure path is about how your group are like these scrappy troubleshooters who uncover sort of this nation-spanning plot, international plot. And in pulling the threads and solving the problems to this plot, you become not just known by these Bloodlords, but you get positions as Bloodlords. Partway through the adventure path, you become part of the ruling aristocracy, and you're still trying to uncover who's behind all this and how does it go. It's a very intrigue-heavy game.
So this is the chaotic good adventure path, right?
It's not even good at all. Yeah.
Super evil.
This is what I've tried to do. This is actually a very difficult line to walk.
Okay.
Because we did Hell's Vengeance, where everybody was expected to be evil, and it could be, go burn down this orphanage. That's just one of the things you're going to do. It's evil.
Yeah.
We've positioned Bloodlords to be, it's for non-good PCs. Right. So, lawful good, neutral good category. You're going to deal with some super unsavory people, and you're going to do some things that are probably good characters would balk at, but you could play neutral characters all the way through. You're never going to be asked, "Hey, torture this person or burn down this orphanage."
Okay, good. Go kill that guy's dog.
But it's going to be like,
don't worry, he's just a renowned mercenary. He'll be fine.
That's right. You'll be okay. But you're working with and for people who eat living people. They're not great.
They're not the best people.
Oh,
they've got a particular diet.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to seeing how that one shakes out. I don't think I've ever played an evil adventure path. I have played the secret evil character in good adventure paths, but that is another story. So this is really intriguing to me, especially because it does have such a different take than Hell's Vengeance. So,
yep, very much so.
We're coming close to time here, and I know that you had to go right after an hour was up. Do you have anything that you wanted to shout out or to before we conclude?
Yeah, I think that the one of the things that I want to emphasize is the Abomination Vaults is it's kind of a great story no matter how you're playing it, right? I feel like there is a type of adventure path that is clever in the mechanical execution of it, if that makes any sense, that it runs great for this one game system, but it doesn't otherwise run great outside of it. And I think Abomination Vaults is a real gem because not only does it run really well in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, but the story is strong enough that not only has it hooked people to be playing it in that system. I've already heard of a lot of people who are like, oh, I never left Pathfinder 1st Edition, but I bought Abomination Vaults and I'm running it in Pathfinder 1st Edition. I even know of people who've told me, oh, I'm running Abomination Vaults, but I'm running it for 5e. And I'm like, I can't. All right, now I can say.
Are you really?
Because I think that I wanted to tell them, just wait and it'll be way easier for you rather than converting it, because we're doing that. But anyway, it's really inspiring to me to see how many people really love this, how many people have embraced the idea that if we're stepping into 5th edition, I've had people say this is a great option to do it. People who know 5th edition really well are like, wow, this is probably the right one for them to test these waters with and see what they think about doing a 5th edition product.
Oh, good. That's cool. Did you want to talk about any personal projects that you happen to be working on?
I can. I've got a successfully funded Kickstarter called the Scaldwood Blight. First or 20th level Pathfinder 2nd Edition Adventure Path. This is not set specifically in Golarion. This is set in the frozen Northlands. It is the theme of primeval forests filled with fae who are mostly dangerous rather than benevolent. And it's Vikings, and it's cities that are, cities where civilization kind of clusters together and they don't go much further than the farms because that's the dangerous wild lands. And and then on top of this, a big demon lord comes stomping around trying to make a name for himself and a place for himself and an entry into the world. And the Scaldwood Blight is a campaign about finding out what's going on and putting a stop to him. And along the way, there's a ton of other paths of encountering with fae that are marauding in a way that they think is harmless but is significantly harmful, devil cults and other things that you'll encounter all along the way.
Very cool.
It was really fun for me to put together. I actually I already gave it away free in that it was on my blog. I did a test back in 2019.
I remember.
I did kind of a test of, let's see what happens if you build a whole adventure path. And what I did was I built the scaffolding of an entire adventure path, kind of chapter at a time. And it was totally not in order. It was in order of whatever I felt like doing that day.
Right.
But what the Scaldwood Blight does is it takes that scaffolding. It's still substantially a scaffolding, to be perfectly honest. But I give you all of the monster stats you're going to need. Flesh out the story just a little bit, but a lot of it is, as you were talking about that 5th edition way, a lot of it is the expectation on the GM to be like,
okay,
oh well, here are the evil fae and a couple of evil druids that are active in this grove.
Sure.
Go make them active in this grove and have your players fight them.
Here's 10 terrible things in this forest. The players should fight 5 of them. Go.
That's right. But yeah, so it's but after adding in a whole bunch of art and maps and all the stat blocks, the whole thing kind of ended up being more, I think, just over 250 pages. It's huge. Mm-hmm. So our Kickstarter successfully funded, and what we're doing is we're providing a PDF version of it and then a print on demand. And people at a higher tier will get the books, and I'll sign them and then mail them off to you. So you just get the actual book in the mail from me. But right now where we're at is I've got the final PDF file. And I've got 2 copies of the book coming. One's coming to me. It is in the mail right now. The other one is going to Owen Casey Stevens, so he can take a look, without whom I couldn't have done any of this project with this Kickstarter. His support was absolutely vital. Awesome. And he's just so knowledgeable. I was just really impressed. It was a real privilege to work with him and take his guidance. So absolutely, as soon as we get one of the first print copies, I want him to tell me what needs to be better, because he just knows this stuff so well. But after that, we'll be able to give the POD files and the PDFs to people and get everything fulfilled. Cool. I'm excited about that.
That is really awesome. What I'm just curious, what made you decide to do a Kickstarter for this project?
It was Owen's idea, actually, as a matter of fact. He was the one that had some of the experience. He'd run plenty of these. And this is No Direction. Wait a minute. Who do we have here from the No Direction Network?
Oh no. Oh my gosh. Hi, John.
All righty. Yeah, John Godet coming by for the game that I'm gonna go jet out to and run. But
Okay.
I really appreciate you having me on, and
Yeah,
happy
thank
to
you for
discuss.
coming. Thank you so
For
much for
sure.
coming.
Yeah.
We'll let you go so you can run Abomination Vaults for your own home game, which is awesome. Any last parting thoughts?
I am on Twitter sometimes at RPG Ron Lundeen. You can find me there. I've also got my own blog that I do at my third-party website, Runamuck Games, runamuckgames.com.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today, Ron, and go have a wonderful session.
I will. Thanks so much.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Bye. Thanks,
Now, a
Ron.
quick word from our sponsors. Kobolds are clever and mischievous. But have you ever thought of them as cuddly? Well, you will after you see the Gallant Goblins Kobold plushies. Coming to Kickstarter on April 12th, which is just around the corner, there are 6 color and class combos planned with swappable accessories and clothing to fit your perfect adventuring party. Sign up for the Kickstarter today at koboldplush.com to get a free bonus digital one-shot when you back the product. That's koboldplush.com.
Oh gosh, that was a delight to hear. All right.
We still have
I just
Ron.
wanted to hear
Hi.
that. I just still wanted to hear that commercial. It was a delight. The cake is so cute.
I have an unexpected guest who's still here.
All righty, I'm off. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Ron.
Bye. All right. Well, I guess we should get to the news. Oh no, that means I have to do goblin voice, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here we go. Pathfinder news. Pathfinder news. Pathfinder news. Pathfinder news. We have some really cool things to talk about today.
Sure do. Well, I think the first big thing is, hey,
Yeah.
Abomination Vaults is coming to 5e.
Well, hey, well, obvious. We just did a whole show on that, Louis.
Whole show on it, but that was one of the big announcements from the last 2 weeks. Here.
That is one of the big ones. But you have another one that I think is I'm going to say equally big.
I think it's much bigger. I find it much more exciting and more important than a dungeon crawl that I will never get to play because I'm always a GM.
Oh no.
No, but another thing is, hey, we mentioned there's the Bloodlords AP coming. That's cool. That's set in Geb. And Book of the Dead is coming, which is talking a lot about Geb and stuff.
Cool.
And Knights of Lastfall is coming, which is talking about the Knights and they face Geb. And there's a lot of stuff going on around Geb. So why not just keep that Geb train going and let's have Lost Omens go check out the Impossible Lands.
What?
Which is the meta region in the Inner Sea that includes a little nation called Geb.
It can't be. That's impossible.
It's impossible. Yeah. The never before ever mentioned Lost Omens Impossible Lands has just been announced. And it's 344 pages, I believe, is what it says.
That is a multiple of 16.
That sure is. And it's covering 4 great regions of the Inner Sea. It's covering Next, it's covering Geb, it's covering Jamre, and the Mana Wastes. And it's gonna,
that is so cool.
You know, it's if you remember Mwangi Expanse, we're giving you the same treatment there with ancestries and cities and other options and stuff. And this time around, I know that we worked really hard with our design team to make sure we cram in a lot of extra rules for you beyond this just ancestry. So there's other stuff going on there. So it's
question,
gonna be great.
question since you worked on it, so how useful will the Lost Omens Impossible Lands book be if I'm running Outlaws of Alkenstar?
It'll help. Yeah, it's going to give you, like, none of the APs ever rely on any of the Lost Omen books, but you're always going to have more ideas and more options, and you're going to get character backgrounds. And
it just gives you like context, right?
Context, and give you extra stuff to play with if you're working on stuff. And then, you know, maybe cool monsters or pictures of like locations and NPCs and stuff that might not show up in other cases. So it's just supplemental material. But if you're not doing an AP, it hopefully is inspiring enough that you'll want to do your own adventures or campaigns in the Impossible Lands.
Yeah, I think that the whole next Geb conflict is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The what did we just talk about? The mana waste that it created in the wars that they had is really kind of an interesting place to go, and like where Alkenstar came and how it grew out of that. I just find the whole region just, I don't know, intriguing. So I'm looking forward to reading it. It is one of the books I have not contributed to.
Yeah, so you'll be completely fresh eyes when you're
I
going
know.
in on there.
It's going to be good. I'm not sitting there going, well, I know the one section I wrote and I remember the outline. No, I have no idea. It's going to be very cool.
So we got a lot of great people working on it, and it's, I mean, still in production right now, but it will be the third book for the year. I think that might be all we have for this year in terms of Lost Omens, because we kind of slotted in the first quarter as that's gonna, Absalom is kind of eating that section, and
I see.
Absalom has come and gone. It just kind of came out a little earlier than that, so you can look forward to Knights of Last Wall travel guide.
I was gonna say you have Knights of Last Wall. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to Knights of Last Wall. I am very interested at the moment in the Knights of Ozum and all of the situation up there. So I'm really interested to see what is developed since second edition. I know that there's been a lot of changes up there, what with the Whispering Tyrant being back and all. So I want to see that one. That is another one that I didn't partake in, so I will be completely unspoiled when I crack the spine. So that'll be cool. Another big news that came out is the Outlaws of Alkenstar Player's Guide is now out, which is pretty darn cool. It's a rootin' tootin' good time. And I must say, I wrote the first book called Punks in a Powder Keg, and I'm super excited about it because it is so over the top. With as much as like Abomination Vaults, my portion was all sandboxy and like there's stuff going on and the players kind of do whatever. Punks in a Powder Keg is a bit more on the rails. It's a bit more of like, quick, go to the next place. There's things happening. But also it is just it is over the top. If you ever saw Wild Wild West with Will Smith and thought, I wish that was a role-playing game, that is the sort of flavor that you will get with this adventure path, and it's very cool.
Mm-hmm. I checked out the player's guide. So player's guides are always done by the developer in charge of the AP, and they're written after the fact, right? So there's never a chance for me to peek in early and be like, oh, what's going to be in this player's guide? I usually just like, oh, when they come out, I'll learn alongside everyone else. And this time around, there's some kind of new tech, if you will, in the player's guide that I think is really cool in the form of there's this nice table that kind of gives you a quick rundown of suggested skills that will show up more in terms of like what's going to be good for recalling knowledge or helping stuff out, or suggested ancestries and stuff like that. And I think it's great. It's a great new development that Patrick came up with.
And it's brilliant. It's brilliant. It is so good. So many people on the forums and everywhere I turn is like, this is the best. Please make this the gold standard going forward, because I can just imagine like, it's useful to read these big paragraphs and be like, well, I was going to play a paladin or, some sort of champion. And it's like, maybe not play a champion. But the table kind of refreshes all that information. Or if you're, one of those TLDR folks, you can just see the table and be like, oh, champion might not be the best fit for this one. Maybe. For some reason, don't take nature, which I think just means there's not like problems to be solved by nature, or like medicine is the big one. That's like, there's not like problems to be solved by medicine. That was what I was thinking about, medicine and occultism. And it's like, well, medicine is still a great way to heal, but like it's not going to open any doors for you that would otherwise be closed.
The adventure probably won't have 50 different asks for give a DC 20 medicine check. It's probably giving you more craft checks and stuff like that.
Exactly. But it is out. It is very cool. I am so excited for people to get their hands on it. The actual adventure path releases later this month, so maybe we can talk more in depth about it in the shout outs in a couple weeks, definitely in 4 weeks. So we'll talk about it then. That is cool. I think, do you have any other news or just shout outs?
Yes. Good. It's not like enormous news, but I always look forward to it. Is the April Fool's blog for the year.
Oh my gosh.
The You Look Fly, You Fools.
Yes, You Look Fly, You Fools.
Which is just a bunch of magic items, both for Starfinder and Pathfinder, made by Paizo staff to be pretty silly. Paizo, I think, thanks to the help of James Case, has actually done the work of corralling all of these in the last couple of years. Has been more about, let's give you silly things as opposed to fake product announcements.
Right.
Be jokey and goofy and fun, which I think is usually a better way to go about it. Because then if you want, you can use these. Last couple of years were some goofy monsters, and this year we get magic items with some wonderful art by Eleanor Farron.
Which, I'm sorry.
Including Obadiah with a cannon coming out of her mouth.
Oh, I know. And here's the best part. So based on the community use rules and Pathfinder Infinite's rules, any non-photography art that shows up, and like there's a couple other caveats, but essentially art that Paizo has and produces and puts on the blog is usable for community use, is usable for Pathfinder Infinite products, which includes all the silly stuff that Eleanor Farron did for this. If you want to use Obadiah with a cannon coming out of her mouth in some products,
yeah,
you can.
You could take the idea here with the head cannon, which is what that picture is depicting,
yes,
and make a whole 10-page PDF of a bunch of different cannons or guns that come out of people's mouths.
Oh my gosh.
And that's your cover piece right there, is Obadiah with the head cannon.
How is it not? That is too funny. Actually, that seems like an evolutionist thing to me. You're like, and here is my weapon. I have a cannon that comes out of my throat. I just have to unhinge my jaw to get it out there. Mm-hmm. Dustin Knight in chat says infinite augmentations. Yeah, not bad. And also points out that No Direction had its own slew of April Fool's jokes. If you are curious, including his optimizer class, which, of course, is the very best class because it is the optimizer.
Yeah. And this isn't Paizo news, but I think it's still worthy.
Sure. Okay.
We had friend of the show, Mark Seifter, on last episode. What? And he had his big release of his new Dragon Ancestry finally come out last week. So if you want to play as dragons in Pathfinder 2e, you have your choice of 40 odd different heritages.
45 ancestries.
It's 36-page book of just dragons and dragon archetypes and dragon feats and dragon background information. It's great. I think it's worth checking out.
It is mind-boggling. You're like, well, what about? Yeah, no, that dragon too. There's a bunch of dragons in there you probably haven't even heard of. There's one designed by Ginny D. There's so much dragons in there. It's a lot. But then you were saying for April Fools.
Yes, for April Fools, he also went the silly route. And if you have dragons, you got to have a dungeon. And you can also pick up a playable dungeon ancestry. You can be a living dungeon, which I am not surprised at all that Mark makes this work, because he just goes in on things like fully committed, gives it to you, plays it straight entirely. And it's great. It definitely is a product. It's great to see it.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. All right, I think that's it for news. So we'll go to wrap-ups and shout-outs.
Sure.
Wrap-ups and shout-outs. Wrap-ups and shout-outs. Wrap-ups and shout-outs. There's a couple shout-outs. I'm going to start with one going back to Outlaws of Alkenstar. Recall Knowledge, friends of the show, have an actual play that is doing Outlaws of Alkenstar, and what's really cool is they've already begun. But it's not out yet. How can that be? I hear you cry. They're doing an episode 0 adventure. They're actually doing like the prequel adventure. And if you've read the player's guide, so I'm not spoiling anything, if you've read the player's guide, you know that all of the player characters start as outlaws and have a grudge. Possibly they're like outlaws and deserve it, and maybe they were framed. Who knows? You decide. You're the player. But there are basically two different major characters in the adventure path that they have a specific grudge against. They're like, partners in crime, and they have gotten you in trouble, and you don't like them. And so that's sort of the setup for this adventure path. And so Recall Knowledge is playing through the backstory and the grudge that the 4 players have against these 2 individuals. And I think that it's really cool. I got a chance to listen to the beginning of it. Super high quality production value at Recall Knowledge with DM Steve. It's very cool. Anyway, I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
What do you got?
I'm always excited to hear people play my adventures.
Oh, I know.
Especially because the first couple of adventure packs that I wrote were like volume 5 and volume 6. So I had to wait for people to get through entire campaigns
Oh my
before they
gosh.
get to my
Yeah.
adventure. But then I did Ruby Phoenix and I was the first one. It's like, aha,
Yep.
finally.
I'm like that with a few places. I'm like, where are you at? And they're like, we're still in the first book. I'm like, okay, I'm on book 2, so it's fine. Just I'll come back. I'll come back later. It's fine.
Yeah. I think I want to shout out. It's not a Pathfinder, not Paizo related thing.
That's okay.
But I'm going to shout out a movie that I caught this last weekend called Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's a movie starring Michelle Yeoh, who you might know from. She's kind of
Everything.
An action star. She's on. She was on Star Trek Discovery. I don't know if she's still on that show.
No, they were supposed to do a spin-off, Section 31 spin-off or whatever.
She was Shang-Chi's aunt in the Shang-Chi movie. She's great. Anyway, this whole movie, the quick rundown is that, hey, it turns out the multiverse is real, and Michelle Yeoh's character, Evelyn, is the only one that could potentially save the multiverse from the big threat that's happening. And the way she does that is by tapping into all her alternate versions and grabbing their powers. So there's one version that knows martial arts really well, and she can tap in, and then suddenly she can do martial arts, and it's super duper zany and exciting and action packed, and also like sentimental. It's really hard to explain. So I think if you're into Michelle Yeoh kicking butt and also the multiverse and it being goofy, I'd say check it out. It turns out that movie isn't even out yet. Living in Seattle means I am a select city when it's playing in select cities.
Oh, okay.
So it's coming out this weekend. Go check it out.
Jeez,
I think it's worth doing. So yeah, that's my thing. I love Michelle Yeoh, and it's great. I watched it with a couple friends, and I think I just can't stop thinking about it now.
All right, very cool. Yeah, I definitely want to see that because I am a huge Michelle Yeoh fan. My wife is as well. So all I have to do is be like, so there's this movie with Michelle Yeoh, and she's like, yeah, we're going to go see it. So that's not a problem. I will definitely see that. More shout outs. Personal one. Vellum and Lace episode 5 just released a few days ago. A little bit late on the March release. But it is called Ill Prepared. So it is, if you're keeping up with the story, it is essentially our first like actual adventure in the narrative form, and you can see how they succeed or not, and what they do, and how it goes. It definitely harkened back to like Pathfinder First Edition PFS days, where they would have a very sandboxy adventure that's like, go break into this facility and get a thing, and then the player characters would come up with all sorts of wild ideas, and you're like, literally you can just bribe the guards, but okay. And they're like, no, we're gonna do this stuff, and it's like overcomplicated plans. So I kind of pulled a lot of inspiration from that, so I think you'll really enjoy it. But go check that out on Pathfinder Infinite, Vellum and Lace episode 5. Cool. I had something else, and my mind blanked because I got really excited about Vellum and Lace.
I mean, I don't have any other shout outs, so maybe we can shout out to where people can chat with us.
What?
Yeah. You heard of this thing called Discord? All the kids are on it these days.
Discord? That sounds noisy. So if you are enjoying No Direction and you want to chat with us some more, you can join us on Discord. You can find the link on our website, nodirectionpodcast.com, and click on the Discord link and join us. It is the chillest, coolest place to talk about Pathfinder and Starfinder stuff. There's a bunch of different channels, depending on what topic you want to do, including looking for group. If you're like, wait a second, I am preparing my 5th edition Abomination Vaults group now. You're allowed to talk 5th edition. That's like, we're not system snobs. We're very friendly. But yeah, come hang out with us. And if you are a Patreon, if you're a patron of the show on Patreon of No Direction, you can join us after the show in the Patreon's private sanctuary, which is pretty cool. What is, you tell them, Luis, you tell them.
Patreon's private sanctum is the after party, as I've been told, I think is the way we always pitch it. It's the after party. Just
It
a few
is.
minutes after the show is done, we will be hopping onto our Discord in the very special private sanctum section of the Discord, hopping onto the channel there, and you can chat with us. You can ask us questions, and you as patrons get to kind of dictate what we talk about or what you want to hear us talk about, and you kind of have us to imagine sitting at a couch at a con, have us to chat with for half an hour or so after every episode.
Yeah.
And
We
if you
were-
miss it,
Yeah.
you can always catch it again later on the Patreon.
Yeah, the Cool Kids Club, Zathos of Assyria says that's except with C's. And also like if you come and hang out, we all answer whatever questions. We are not allowed to leave. They don't let us. We're strapped down and you are holding a sledgehammer. I mean, never mind. That's not that bad. No, it's great. But yeah, no, and anything you want to know, we talk about all sorts of random stuff in there. It's really fun. And if you want to catch up on these and you're like, what? There's a hang with Vanessa and Louise after? Yeah. You can become a patron and we actually record and put those all on the Patreon site. So you should do that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Very cool. Well, I think that is all the things.
Yeah.
So without further ado, if you need to find the path, you need no direction.